Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody, whatever part of the world you're currently listening to our Space Economics podcast on Spotify, as well as watching our video blog on our Space Economics TV YouTube channel. Today's February the 18th, in just a couple more days until the month of March. Imagine that. It feels as if, Christmas just ended a few days ago, but here we are, almost 3 months into 2024. So that tells you that, you know, the world will continue to spin. We all have to basically learn to live in today's world and adjust accordingly to the changes that's happening worldwide, not just in our little tiny corner of the world, but we're all interconnected one way or the other as societies and communities and governments and systems. So we would all need to learn how to, kind of live in peace, compromise, be more accepting of each other, be respectful of each other, and tolerant of other people's, point of views. Hopefully that will help us all, humanity, to prevent conflicts and unnecessary wars. With that said, been reading the news and kind of catching up on my geopolitical as well as geoeconomics activities throughout Europe and Eurasia, Pacific Rim, Asia, and in the U.S. markets. And it never stops to amaze me some of the things that I read about. So I think what I'm going to do is I'll title this podcast, um, "Who Wants to Be Stuck on Stupid? Let's Ask America." Okay, I think that's going to be my title for this podcast because you know, time and time again, every time I go on my news, the news content that I typically read off of my news feeds on my social media page, come across information that it's just so inconsistent with the logical reasoning and the sound mind and the balanced thoughts and interpretation of current events. So one news that caught my attention was this news article pertaining to Mr. Putin wanting to de-escalate the war and basically engaging in a ceasefire with Ukraine. And for some reason, the people that are helping make decisions in the Western world, particularly in Ukraine and in the States, have decided not to, accept that ceasefire, proposal from Russia, which is baffling to me. Okay, I mean, regular people throughout Europe are tired of this war. Regular Americans are tired of this war. I mean, we've shelled out billions and billions of our tax dollars to be sent to Ukraine as well as European, Union member countries, and to a war that could have been prevented, to a war that could have been de-escalated. So I'm just confused by this whole situation. When one side is ready to call it quits and return to normalcy, I would think that people would want to consider that and participate in a ceasefire, since there is no need for any more human lives to be lost. There is no more need for collateral damages to take place. Ruined buildings, monuments, historical sites that could have been preserved is now in ruins. They've been leveled to the ground. Okay. Another situation that I still I have yet to fully appreciate is this case between the two prisoners of war one in Ukraine, which is an American citizen, Gonzalo Lira, who had perished last January, and the most recent one, Mr. Navalny, in Russia, who is a Russian citizen, who was imprisoned for extortion. Look, I mean, I don't know the full story regarding his imprisonment. They said it was politically driven at one point, but most Americans don't speak Russian, and most Europeans don't speak Russian. So it's really hard for us to opine on the contents of, Mr. Navalny's, imprisonment. And, unfortunately, he had passed. I don't know what, transpired regarding his passing. I have no idea the overall motivation of his imprisonment, but I doubt anybody in the States or in any of our news sources are proficient enough to basically, provide quality interpretation and logical, assessment of what took place regarding Navalny's case in Russia, because he is of Russian citizenship. He speaks Russian, obviously, so his case kind of transpired somewhat internally. Whereas Mr. Gonzalez's case, he's a foreigner, first of all, in a country that he's not, able to fully express himself in the local language, on top of, basically just opining and sharing material on his social media platform that was widely, provided online on various social media platforms. So his case is somewhat, you know, more thought-provoking, because he's an American citizen who basically tried to escalate the situation back in 2022. And, he specifically stated in one of his testimonies that the reason that he posted his, sentiments and his opinion, and why he piggybacked off of other people's, news reports in Ukraine, was because he's trying to basically save lives and to escalate the situation. And yet the U.S. press didn't cover that his assessment, his review, and hardly gave him any form of coverage after he had passed last January. This is the Western news, industry in the U.S. So, and yeah, if you look at the news coverage, let me share this, metrics. Let me share my screen real quick. If you look at, in the last couple of days, February 16th, it's only been 2 days, CNN basically wrote about Mr. Alexei Navalny's passing 16 times, CBS News 17 times, NBC News plus MSNBC 17 times, the Wall Street Journal 7 times, New York Post 6 times, Newsweek 8 times, the New York Times 22 times, Washington Post 12 times, Bloomberg 14 times. Okay, so they covered a news story that is in Russian, okay, first of all. And on top of that, it's an internal political conflict between, political candidates, internal. Okay, he's not a foreigner in Russia. And so, yeah, all these news stations just turn out to be instant subject matter experts of the Russian political system and the Russian language and the Russian society and the Russian, overall, social, contact. Okay. But check this out. Pertaining to Gonzalo, an American citizen who posted his thoughts in English on his social media platform in English. Okay, it wasn't in a foreign language, it was in English. Yet CNN, that is a U.S.-based English-speaking organization, okay, covered zero pertaining, material pertaining to Gonzalo Lira's passing. CBS News zero. This is, January 12th. And NBC News and MSNBC zero. Wall Street Journal zero. New York Post one time, and it wasn't really talking about his passing. It was basically talking about why he was in prison. Newsweek same thing, same story. New York Times zero. Washington Post zero. Bloomberg zero. The British Reuters devoted zero publication to Gonzalo Lira and 26 to Navalny. Okay, folks. I don't know what's taking place, but I thought we're trying to de-escalate the situation. I thought we're supporting peace, democracy, the rule of law, freedom of speech. I thought our values is directly, entrenched with, other countries that we deem are our friends and allies. And we're supporting Ukraine because Gonzalo Lira perished in Ukraine after he got on his social media platform and said, guess what, folks, I need help. I'm being tortured and extorted. Please help me. And he had reached out to the various, powers of this world, the U.S. and other Western powers, and even, the international community. And yet no one, which is baffling to me, is strange. No one lifted a finger. Don't you all find that really strange? I mean, why? No one, conducted any form of news piece pertaining to Gonzalo Lira's case. An American who basically wanted the war to end back in 2022 to escalate the situation. I just don't get it. Why our major news organization in the U.S. Elected not to cover, Mr. Lira's case and his passing. Again, I'm going to give them a round of applause because I feel that they definitely are not interested in covering the case. Doesn't seem like they're interested even, stopping this war. I can understand, the war's, a pretty juicy story for most of these, news agencies because they're making quite a bit of money off of it. But come on, folks. America, do we want to continue to be stuck on stupid? Do we want to continue, to support things that we don't really have enough, information to begin with, and yet billions and billions of taxes are being sent over to a country that's not directly connected to the U.S. I mean, so many people around the world are scratching their heads. I thought the overall game plan was to escalate this war and return the region to normalcy, which I can fully support because so many people throughout Europe wants the war to end. Tons of people throughout Europe wants the war to end, to get everything back to normalcy. Okay, so yeah, folks, it's just one of those things that are. I thought in the year 2024, with all the social media, platforms, popping up all over the world, that we would be a better world, a better society, and well-informed, people by now. But yet, it's like we managed to inch up, 1 foot forward, and then up. Guess what? We're backing up and pulling away from progress, 6, 7 foot back, uh, you know, to where we had tried our very best to leave, the situation and predicament and mindset and worldviews and concepts that were archaic and counterproductive back in those days. The world does not need to have any more war going on. It's seriously does not need to engage in any more, preventable conflicts in today's world. Okay, folks. Yeah, craziness. You know what? I would suggest for America to do this. Reflect on all of these news agencies that I just mentioned, and until they become more, transparent, and they actually cover real, relevant, truthful, adequate, valuable, and pertinent stories, do not use their platform. Okay. Gravitate towards the independent news organization on your social media platform. At least so far, I haven't seen a whole lot of, you know, like prevention or silencing going on online via social media platform. I don't know if that's going to, continue to be that way, but at least right now there isn't a whole lot of suppression of independent news content on the social media platform. As a former U.S. Senate candidate and someone who understand, personally what it was like to be, ignored and your content not, shared by the major news organizations in the U.S. I know what it's like when relevant information is being suppressed. But guess what, folks? America, do we want to continue to be stuck on stupid? Do we want to continue to, be the sheep, following, material content and people that aren't very transparent with us? They're not telling us the truth. Okay, folks. With that said, yeah, there's just so much stuff that I'm reading, currently news-wise and various market disruptions that's happening throughout the world, and even, locally in the US and Europe, that we should be more interested in progress rather than, fanning the flame and stoking the fire by encouraging conflict and by encouraging, more, resistance regarding this, unnecessary war conflict. It could have been prevented. Imagine all the thousands of lives that could have been saved. Imagine all the historical buildings that could have been preserved. The disruption in the markets, the disruption of the political system, the disruption of lives, uprooting so many lives, moving them to places that they never intended to move to because of this war. Come on, America, we need to wake up. We seriously need to figure things out and pay attention carefully on the things that we support and the things that, we would want to preserve in this world. I mean, how do we want to be, remembered in history? Do we want to be remembered to be that country that is just kind of, lost touch with our, overall values, our purpose, our mission, our, original capacity to preserve peace. You know, I mean, look at all the wars throughout the world. You know, thousands and millions of Americans had died and perished trying to preserve democracy, peace, and human rights. You know, the freedom of speech. I mean, come on, folks. It doesn't really take a rocket scientist to have to figure things out. I mean, I'm extremely concerned because it's like right in front of us. All these stuff that's manifesting itself pertaining to the war in Ukraine is right in front of us. It's transpiring in front of our eyes. It's on our social media feed. It's on in various talking points and objectives by those individuals that are trying to pay attention to what's going on. And yet, it's like we're holding on to a past, to an era, to a society and civilization that we felt so accustomed to back, 60, 70, 80 years ago, instead of trying to build the future together and look for a solution that would escalate the problems of this world. Okay, folks. I mean, Gonzalo Lira, for example, I mean, I understand he wasn't the most popular kid in high school per se. People didn't like his content that much, but he had age and he had matured and he had figured out that he can't be operating in the same school of thought that he did when he was in his early 20s, 30s, and even 40s. All Gonzalo Lira tried to do is to make amends with this world. He tried to make amends with the public. He tried to make amends with this, the garbage that he had to, I guess, put the world through, and some of the things that he wasn't thinking back then. I mean, that's kind of like the sin of every young person, and yet no one took him for what it was worth, which was based off of his interpretation, his journalistic experience and skill to help de-escalate the situation, preserve lives in Ukraine. He was looking out for the Ukrainian public, and yet he was put in jail for wanting to help the Ukrainian public survive and not have to engage in a war conflict against, a professional military regime that, was well trained in combat. And now, even the Russians are saying, we really would like to engage on a ceasefire. We don't want any more war. They don't want to, escalate this conflict any longer. 2 years in the, and it's still an ongoing war. 2 years. I mean, there's just no point for a war conflict to be dragged on for this long in the year 2024, folks. I mean, seriously, who benefits from war? Who benefits from all this crap that's happening? There's children out there that have died. There's families broken. Some people, become instant widows because of this war. It's just unbelievable. I cannot express myself any strongly enough, pertaining to this war conflict, because it's so unnecessary. Okay. And yet, these media organizations I'm really getting extremely ticked off and concerned when these media organizations are making money off of this war and basically allowing lives to be lost, and societies to be disrupted, regions to be, you know, put in at odds with each other, you know, over what? I mean, material things. I mean, when I run for the U.S. Senate, I would specifically reach out to these, major news organization. I specifically told them my background in the region, my overall experience, and told them about my objective, which was basically to help educate the world and educate the U.S. population about, building capacity, improving, lives of people in Central and Eastern Europe. And guess what? None of them showed up and said to me, "Oh, okay, let's try to explore this." This was back in 2020. Okay, folks. Um, as you all know, in 2024, which basically was the onset of this whole conflict, in 2014, um, that's when things kind of manifested itself between Russia and Ukraine over Crimea and Donetsk. And so I would have thought that the Western media would want to find a way to escalate this kinds of situation or conflicts, or what could precipitate a conflict, or things that could motivate people to engage in a conflict. I thought these news organizations would want to try to figure that out and render some sort of an amicable solution to a pre-existing condition. None of that happened. And this is why I'm telling every single one listener, whoever's exposed to this podcast and video blog, to gravitate to an independent news organization that is online, that is not funded by special interest groups that are, making their bread and butter off of conflicts and the overall tragedy of a war, you know, event in this world. Because in the year 2024, folks, you can make just about any form of income. Okay, you can make various sources of incomes in the year 2024 because of technology, because of social media platform. You can create opportunities in job creation, in economic development, attracting investment in the year 2024 using your social media platform, which why I wrote the book Face Economics back, when I was in college. The utilization of social media platform. Okay, there is no need anymore for any news organization to, try to fan the flame of conflict. There is no need for any news organization to, just bank on one source of income by not sharing and not being transparent on potential conflict issues and situation in this world. Okay, folks. So yeah, with that said, I mean, it's baffling because we're no longer in the year 1946. We're no longer in the year, we're not even in the century of 1990s anymore. We're in the 2020s already. Okay. We got to accept that we all have to find a way to live in peace, live in harmony, to have some sort of, compromise intact when dealing with other countries. I'm not a pacifist. I don't believe in being a pacifist, but I seriously would look deep and hard on the need for war. And this conflict between Russia and Ukraine could have been prevented. Okay, folks. Diplomacy could have solved this issue if, calm, logical, wise, and clear minds were involved. Okay. Um, you know what? It's just I'm getting very emotional because I've seen this whole conflict escalating, so many people's lives basically appended by it and disrupted by it and ruined by it. You know that to me, as someone that helps build capacity in countries, create an alternative to conflict, and promote diplomacy worldwide, I'm sitting here trying to figure out why is it even happening. And my hypothesis is, and my, somewhat of a theory is because the people that are making the decisions are basically reflecting back in the past, the years that they grew up in, the experience, the news that they were exposed to, the mindset, the worldview, the interpretation of their era, of their years. And they've forgotten that the past is long gone. When they were growing up, there was no social media platform. There was no, blockchain technology. There's no Internet of Things. There wasn't even any smartphone back then when they were growing up. Okay. And yet these are the same people that are looking back into their prior experience growing up and assessing the new world market and telling everybody, oh, guess what? They know what the heck they're talking about, even though they barely know how to freaking attach an attachment on their email and even understand what technology is able to create. They're scared of what's to come because they've never been exposed to artificial intelligence. They've never been exposed to all these innovative, technologies that we are now exposed to. And so instead of using those tools to improve the world situation, to improve the overall economic development around the world, they're using technology to inflict the pain of the past. And when I say inflict the pain of the past is basically they look at, what transpired back in those days and say, let's use these technology and, these tools to make sure that we have the upper hand instead of let's use this technology by building opportunities worldwide. It's a totally different concept and mentality. Okay. So, yeah, America, it's up to us, if we want to remain to be stuck on stupid. Okay. Do we want to be, stuck on stupid anyway? What benefits that going to be for us? All right, folks, with that said, thank you for watching and listening to our podcast. My name is Al Mina, the concept author of Face Economics, the utilization of the social media platform in economic development. I want to give a quick shout out to this community that is, trying to preserve the memory and the legacy of Mr. Gonzalo Lira, because in my book, I think he did try his very best to escalate this conflict between Russia and Ukraine. And I believe, that he wanted to save lives. I truly do believe that he tried to save lives. And in turn, he ended up sacrificing his own life. Which is a tragedy within itself when, you have an American citizen that he knew exactly what's about to come. He knew that he's in imminent danger. He knows that by him sharing his thoughts and opinions regarding the war and using the same material that people are publishing on their social media platform, piggyback off of, he knows the ramification of what he was about to engage in, but yet he still went ahead and tried to influence the world by sharing his thoughts and review in order to de-escalate the war and preserve lives and end the war. So yeah, folks, and it's truly is very unfortunate that our news organizations in the U.S. haven't given him that honor and haven't given him that privilege to basically be seen as that one resonating voice for peace in the region and to help Ukraine, and both Russia and Ukraine amicably solve this problem, diplomatically, engage in basically finding a solution without the loss of a human life. I mean, Tucker Carlson did an interview with Mr. Putin, just about a week or two ago. And it was an eye-opening interview, given that it sounded to me that Mr. Putin wanted to negotiate with the Ukrainians, and he wanted, the war to end as well by negotiating with the Ukrainians. So, yeah, crazy things have been happening in just a matter of a couple of months, regarding this issue with Mr. Gonzalo and now Mr. Navalny. Unfortunately, he had perished, in captivity, and there really isn't anything that the English-speaking world can, provide an opinion on, because none of us speaks Russian, and most Americans simply cannot evaluate material that is in Russian language and have never been exposed to the Russian society, which is why Gonzalo Rivera and Tucker Carlson decided to reflect on this situation with the Russians, because they weren't given the opportunity to voice their side of things, right? So had more Americans know, enough about Russia and the society in itself, then maybe there won't be a war. Maybe this is all about, some misunderstanding between Ukraine and Russia. And to me, based off of some of the opinions that I've read and heard online via social media, that it's just a major, misunderstanding on both sides. So, the war was so unnecessary. It could have been prevented. And most Americans, especially Americans that are regular Americans, people that go to work 9-to-5 jobs, living, paycheck to paycheck, have not a whole lot of, funds and resources that could have been helped by all that billions that went to Ukraine. And even our own infrastructure in the U.S. could have been fixed and improved. And, if there was no war, that money that was sent to Ukraine could have been used in the U.S. or in other places, even if we could have given it to Ukraine, to help build their capacity, because that's what they needed to build their capacity without engaging in a war. So there would have been all these people that perished in Ukraine could have been saved had we think differently as a society in America, had we given, Americans that are nobody and are voiceless, that most of the time are marginalized, had we given them the opportunity to share their views and thoughts, the underdogs of America, okay, have we given them the opportunity to share their thoughts, their minds, their thinking ability in America, we would be a much better off society, in my opinion. Okay, folks. Um, anyway, I'm going to try to end it here since I think I went over my allocated time for today's podcast. But please consider everything that I just mentioned, and let me know if you have any thoughts. I'd be more than happy to answer them. Sometimes I don't get to read all your comments at the bottom section of our video blog, but I'll do my best to reflect on them and respond. So with that said, my name is Almin. I'm the Face Economics Concept author, the utilization of the social media platform in economic development. Wish you all a happy Sunday and enjoy the upcoming week. Make sure to let your friends and family feel special and hug them, kiss them, you know, take them out, walk with them, whatever, make them feel special, because at the end of the day, all in this, we're only going to be on this rock for, whatever period of time. And let's make this world a better place. Let's make this world a kinder, a more, tolerant and loving place. Okay, folks. Thank you so much for your time. Bye-bye.